ॐ नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। ॐ नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। ॐ नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। नारायणं नमस्कृत्य नरं चैव नरोत्तमं देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जायमुदीरयेत्। नष्टप्रायेषु अभद्रेषु नित्यं भागवत सेवया भगवतीरुत्तमश्लोके भक्तिर्भवती नैष्टिकी। ॐ ज्ञानतिमिरन्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। श्रीचैतन्यमनोभीष्टं स्थापितं येन भूतले स्वयं रूपकदा मह्यं ददाति स्वपदान्तिकम्। नमो विष्णुपादाय कृष्णप्रेष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदान्त स्वामीनिति नामिने। नमस्ते सरस्वते देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्यदेशतारिणे। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभो नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्त वृंद। हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे हरे। हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। Hare Krishna. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam by His Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. We are reading from Canto 4, Chapter 25, the characteristic of King Puranjan. So we are at text 35. एते सखाय सख्यो मे नरा नार्यश्च मानदा सुप्तयां मयि जागरति नागोऽयं पालयं पुरीम्. Translation.
My dear gentlemen, all these men and women with me are known as my friends, and the snake, who always remains awake, protects this city even during my sleeping hours. So much I know. I do not know anything beyond this. Purport. Puranjana inquired from the woman about those 11 men and their wives and the snake. The woman gave a brief description of them. She was obviously without full knowledge of her surrounding men and women and the snake. As stated before, the snake is the vital force of the living being. This vital force always remains awake even when the body and the senses become fatigued and do not work. Even in the state of unconsciousness, when we sleep, the snake or the life force remains intact and awake. Consequently, we dream when we sleep. When the living entity gives up this material body, the vital force still remains intact and is carried to another material body. That is called transmigration or change of the body. And we have come to know this process as death. Actually, there is no death. The vital force always exists with the soul. And when the soul is awakened from so called sleep, he can see his 11 friends or the active senses and the mind with their various desires, that is, wives. The vital life force remains. Even during our sleeping hours, we can understand by virtue of our breathing process that the snake lives by eating the air that passes within this body. Air is exhibited in the form of breathing, and as long as breath is there, one can understand that a sleeping man is alive. Even when the gross body is asleep, the vital force remains active and alive to protect the body. Thus, the snake is described as living and eating air to keep the body fit and fit for life. Hare Krishna.
Yeah. So the girl, she began to say, I do not know much about who I am and where I have come from, neither I know the Gotra, but I know that I am along with these men and women who are carrying me, and they are my friends. And there is a snake, and the snake always remains awake, always protecting me, even I am when I am sleeping. In the purport, Srila Prabhupada explains these men, the bodyguards are being explained, are the 11 bodyguards, that is 10, 5 plus 5 plus 1, Gyanendriya, Karmendriya plus the mind. So these are the 11 bodyguards. And the hundreds of desires are associated with the senses. They are compared to uh, the wives of these men. So there are bodyguards and wives. And then there is a snake, and the snake is Panchaprana. So previously we have already seen that the snakes remain alive by eating air. Right. So just like the trees remain alive by drinking water, similarly, and tree drink water through their feet. Similarly, the snake and this pancha prana, the vital force, is always awake. In fact, when the prana leaves the body is called as dead, but the prana never leaves the soul. Right? The prana will carry the soul to the next body, to the next destination. Karmana daiva jantur dehopapadyate. And this is how the process of transmigration takes place. So during a sleep, during a unconscious, whatever time, what happens is this pancha prana is always accompanying the soul, and the pancha prana accompanies the soul even after the death and to the new body. Text 36. दृष्ट्यागतोऽसि भद्रं ते ग्राम्यान् कामान् विपप्सते उद्विष्यामि तान् स्तेहं स्वबन्धुभूः अरिन्दमम्. Translation.
Translation: O killer of the enemy, you have somehow or other come here. Sorry. This is certainly great fortune for me. I wish all auspicious things for you. You have a great desire to satisfy your senses, and all my friends and I shall try our best in all respects to fulfill your desires. Purport: the living entity comes down into this material world for sense gratification, and his intelligence, represented by the women, gives him the proper direction by which he can satisfy his senses to the best capacity. In actuality, however, intelligence comes from the Supersoul, or the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and he gives full facility to the living entity who has come down to this material world. As stated in Bhagavad Gita 2.41, व्यवसायत्मिका बुद्धिर एकहे कुरु नंदन बहु सखा क्या अनंतस च बुद्धयो व्यवसायी नाम. Those who are on the spiritual path are resolute in purpose, and their aim is one. O beloved child of the Kurus, the intelligence of those who are irresolute is many-branched. When a devotee is advancing towards spiritual realization, his only aim is the service of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He does not care for any other material or spiritual activity. King Puranjana represents the ordinary living entity, and the woman represents the ordinary living entity's intelligence. Combined, the living entity enjoys his material senses, and the intelligence supplies all paraphernalia for his enjoyment. As soon as he enters the human form, the living entity is entrapped by a family tradition, nationality, custom, etc. These are all supplied by the Maya of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Thus, the living entity, under the bodily conception of life, utilizes his intelligence to his best capacity in order to satisfy his senses. Hare Krishna.
Yeah. O Arindama, O killer of the enemy, you have somehow come here and you have great desire to enjoy your senses. Your coming here is a great fortune to me, and thus, with all my friends, let us try to fulfill your desires. This is what the woman is saying to Puranjan, the king, and that means this is what the intelligence Prabhupada describes in the purport. The living entity comes down the material world for sense gratification, bhoga ichha, right? Bhogavancha. And this bhogavancha, when it does, then the intelligence is supplied, and the intelligence presents different plans how to enjoy within this material world. Ideally, the intelligence should come from the Paramatma, but the bewildered living entity, the intelligence makes the different plans, and thus he wants to enjoy. Prabhupada says, but for the spiritual personalities, they are resolute in purpose and their aim is one. So here the woman is, so it is not that the man is having the woman. Here every living entity, like we all listeners here, we are all studying Srimad Bhagavatam here. We all have intelligence, and that is compared to the wife. And then there are the 11 senses, and then the desires. They are compared to the bodyguards and their wives. Right? And there is a Pancha Prana, and which is on which the soul is being carried. And this is the discussion. And this is how the living entity gets into the bodily concept of life, aham mameti, and thus utilizes the intelligence to satisfy the senses. Chaitanya Charitamrita puts it in a very succinct way. Atmendriya pritivancha dhare kamanam krishnendriya pritivancha dhare premanam. So the such a beautiful description of difference between kama and prema. And Srila Prabhupada has given one beautiful statement in the previous purport that when you want to satisfy the senses by keeping Krishna in the priority, then that is also what is that statement exactly? Correct. Text 29. To desire to enjoy this material world as a subordinate of the Supreme is also godly. Okay. So this is something very, very important. Right. Text 37. Imam त्वमादिष्टस्व पुरीं नवमुखीं विभो मयोपितान् गृणन् कामान् भोगान् कामभोगान् शतं समाः. Translation.
My dear Lord, I have just arranged the city of 9 gates for you so that you can have all kinds of sense gratification. You may live here for 100 years and everything for your sense gratification will be supplied. Purport. Dharmartha kama mokshanam daraha samprapti hetuvah. The wife is the cause of all kinds of success in religion, economic development, sense gratification, and ultimately salvation. When one accepts a wife, it is so be understood that he is being helped in his progressive march toward liberation. In the beginning of life, a person is trained as a brahmachari and is then allowed to marry a suitable girl and become a householder. If one is thoroughly trained in household life, he finds all facilities for human life, eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. Everything is there if it is executed according to regulative principles.
Yeah. So, my dear Lord Prabhu, I have arranged this city of 9 gates in such a way that you may live peacefully here. Shatam Sama, Shatam Sama means for 100 full years and fulfill your desires. And in the purport, Srila Prabhupada quotes this Dharmartha Kama Mokshanam Daraha Samprapti Hetava. That, the suitable spouse is being arranged by the Supreme Lord so that one may progress in dharma, artha, kama, and moksha. So, progressively, and this is, having there is a very beautiful quote by Naval Ravikant, okay, one of the thinker, Naval Ravikant, and he says, what is that quote is? He says that healthy body, peaceful mind, and house full of love, they have to be acquired, right? These are like one of the greatest benedictions. So people only count their fortune, net worth in terms of how much money they have and flats they have and kind of a thing. But have we ever counted our net worth in terms of the family members? A very good husband or a wife, very good children, very good parents, right? All this comes under the great fortune. Fortune is not just counting dollars and rupees. And Srila Prabhupada says, right? So that having a good wife, Dara, or having a very good husband who is facilitating one's dharma, artha, kama, moksha, is one of the greatest benediction that one can have in this human form of life. So this is very important, that house full of love, body full of health, and meaningful relationships, right? So they have to be acquired over the period. And one should be very careful that sometimes we see people are after one goal so much that they may miss on the another goal, another role in their life. That too much of a money, and then person has no time for the family. Person has no. He sees, अरे अभी तो बच्चा सेकंड स्टैंडर्ड में था, सडनली 12वीं हो गया उसका, 10 साल पता ही नहीं कैसे चले गए. Not like that. You have to live your life, right? So Text 38. कं नु त्वदन्यं रमये हि अरज्ञं कोविदम् असंपराय अभिमुखम् अश्वस्तं विदं पशुम्. Translation.
How can I expect to unite with others who are neither conversant about sensual nor capable of knowing how to enjoy life while living or after death? Such foolish persons are like animals because they do not know the process of sense enjoyment in life and after death. Purport: since there are 84 lakh species of life, there are also many different living conditions. In the lower grades of life, in plant and in tree life, there is no system for sensual intercourse. In upper grades, in the life of birds and bees, there is sensual life. But the insects and animals do not know how to actually enjoy sensual life. In the human form of life, however, there is full knowledge of how to enjoy sensual life. Indeed, there are many so called philosophers who give directions on how to enjoy sensual life. There is even a science called Kama Shastra, which is the science of sex. In human life, there are also such divisions as brahmacharya, grahastha, vanaprastha, and sannyasa. There is no sensual life except in the grahastha or householder ashrama. The brahmachari is not allowed any sex. A vanaprastha voluntarily refrains from sex, and the sannyasi is completely renounced. The karmis do not practice brahmacharya, vanaprastha, or sannyasa life, for they are very much interested in grahastha life. In other words, a human being is very much materially inclined. Indeed, all living entities are materially inclined. They prefer grahastha life because there is no concession for sex. The karmis think the other statuses of life are worse than animal life, for animals also have sex, whereas brahmacharis, vanaprastha, and sannyasi completely give up. The karmis therefore abhor these orders of spiritual life. Hare Krishna.
Yeah. How can I expect to unite with other when person doesn't have the knowledge of kama or even dharma? And therefore, they are compared to as good as the animals who are devoid of this subtler knowledge of kama and dharma. In the purport, Srila Prabhupada explains that there are 84 lakh species of life and also different living conditions. And all these living conditions, the common things are ahara, nidra, bhaya, ityadi. Right? These things are very common. However, it is only in the human form of life there is a special prerogative. And the special prerogative in the human form of life, every activity is refined. Ahara, it is refined. One can go, one can have chappan bhog and everything else. Nidra is refined. One can have a very refined nidra. Bhaya is also refined. So, every activity is refined, and thus there is indication in the Shastra, authorized Shastric literature, which will give the direction about refinement of Dharma, Artha, Kama, and Moksha. So, there is Dharma Shastra, there is a Artha Shastra, there is a Kama Shastra, there is a Moksha Shastra, and there is a science everywhere. So, the human form of life, everything is very wonderfully arranged. However, people in general, they are more interested only in the Kama. And therefore, Prabhupada says here, generally, karmis, they do not like brahmachari, vanaprastha, and sannyas, but they generally like grahastha ashram so much because there is a facility for the Kama. And here, so the point here is that the human form of life provides better facility for everything, right? Better facility for eating. We can have different rasas, right? Sometimes in one plate only you will have so many different rasas you will have. That is not the case with the animal. Animals will be eating just the one food. So there is no refinement in eating. Similarly, there is no refinement in sleeping, right? So human form of life is very rare and is very highly facilitated even to conduct the four base instincts which are otherwise present in all other animals. Text 39. धर्मार्थ्यत्रार्थकामौ च प्रजानन्दोऽमृतं यशः लोकाविशोकाविरजा यान् केवलिनो विदुः. Translation.
The woman continued. In this material world, a householder's life brings all kinds of happiness in religion, economic development, sense gratification, and the begetting of children, sons and grandsons. After that, one may desire liberation as well as material reputation. The householder can appreciate the results of sacrifices which enable him to gain promotion to superior planetary systems. All this material happiness is practically unknown to transcendentalists. They cannot even imagine such happiness. Purport. According to Vedic instructions, there are two paths for human activities. One is called Pravritti Marga and the other is called Nivritti Marga. The basic principle for either of these paths is religious life. In animal life, there is only Pravritti Marga. Pravritti Marga means sense enjoyment. Nivritti Marga means spiritual advancement. In the life of animals and demons, there is no conception of Nivritti Marga, nor is there any actual conception of Pravritti Marga. Pravritti Marga maintains that even though one has the prosperity for sense gratification, he can gratify his senses according to the directions of the Vedic injunctions. For example, everyone has the propensity for sex life, but in demoniac civilization, sex is enjoyed without restriction. According to Vedic culture, sex is enjoyed under Vedic
They just
instructions.
slightly differently.
Prabhuji, sir. Thus, the Vedas give direction to civilized human beings to enable them to satisfy their propensities for sense gratification. In the Nivritti Marga, however, on the path of transcendental realization, sense gratification is completely forbidden. The social orders are divided into four parts: Brahmacharya, Grihastha, Vanaprastha, and Sannyasa. And only in householder life can the Pravritti Marga be encouraged or accepted according to Vedic instructions. In the orders of Brahmacharya, Vanaprastha, and Sannyasa, there are no facilities for sense gratification. In these words, the woman is advocating Pravritti Marga only and is discouraging the path of Nivritti Marga. She clearly says that the yatis, the transcendentalists, who are concerned only with the spiritual life, Kaivalya, cannot imagine the happiness of Pravritti Marga. In other words, in other words, the man who follows the Vedic principles enjoys a materialistic way of life, not only by becoming happy in this life, but also in the next life by being promoted to the heavenly planets. In this life, such a person gets all kinds of material opulences, such as sons and grandsons, because he is always engaged in various religious functions. The material distresses are birth, old age, disease, and death. But those who are interested in the Pravritti Marga hold various religious functions at the time of birth, old age, disease, and death. Without caring for the distresses of birth, old age, disease, and death, they are addicted to performing the special functions according to the Vedic ritualistic ceremonies. Factually, however, Pravritti Marga is based on sense gratificationary life. As stated in the Srimad Bhagavatam 7.9.45, Yen Maitunadi Grohamedi Sukham hi Tucham. A householder who is too much addicted to Pravritti Marga is actually called a Gruhamedi, not a Grihastha. Although Grihastha desires sense gratification, he acts according to Vedic instructions. The Gruhamedi, however, who are interested only in sense gratification, does not follow any Vedic instruction. The Gruhamedi engages himself as an advocatory of sense gratificatory life and also allows his sons and daughters to engage in sense gratification and to be deprived of any glorious end in life. A Grihastha enjoys sense gratificatory life in this life and as well as in the next. But a Gruhameti does not know what the next life is about because he is simply interested in sense gratification in this life. On the whole, when one is too much inclined towards sense gratification, he does not care for the transcendental spiritual life. In this age of Kali, especially, no one is interested in spiritual advancement. Even though it is sometimes found that one may be interested in spiritual advancement, he is most likely to accept a bogus method of spiritual life, being misguided by so many pretenders. Thank you.
Thank you. Very good. Dharma hi arthartha kamocha. So the woman continued that the householder's life brings all kinds of happiness in dharma, artha, kama, and moksha. And thus there is facility for the progeny, sons and grandsons. And in this way, one will finally desire liberation as well as material reputation, both. Loka vishoka viraja ya na kevalino vidu. However, this kind of happiness is unknown to the yatis, transcendentalists, who have simply rejected the path of pravritti marga. Right. In the purport, Srila Prabhupada explains that according to Vedic instructions, there are two paths. One is called pravritti marga, another is called nivritti marga. Pravritti marga is path of the pravritti, just following the dictations of the mind and senses. And nivritti marga is a path of nivritti, right, unfollowing, or path of tapasya, where one is trying to control mind and senses, right. And Prabhupada says here, pravritti marga literally means the sense enjoyment, and nivritti marga means the spiritual advancement. Generally, animals are always on the pravritti marga, and they very faithfully follow their pravritti marga, right. We have seen that the lion or a tiger will eat only the designated food. Even if you give him rabdi, he will not eat, because he will eat only his designated food. And within that designation, whatever limitations they are being given, they will very carefully follow their own thing and nothing more than that, right? So that is the case with animals, and similarly the case with the demons, that they will very clearly follow their pravritti marga. However, in the human form of life, there is a facility to follow nivritti marga. So what is the nivritti marga? Nivritti marga means to inquire about the absolute and go beyond the base instincts of ahar, nidra, bhaya ityadi. Right. So, and a human form of life is especially glorious because even while following nivritti marga, there is facilitation of the pravritti aspects in one's life. And this is where gloriously the grihastha ashram is situated. So here the woman is advocating that pravritti marga and discouraging the path of nivritti marga to this, to Puranjan. And Prabhupada gives both the connotations to this, that this is the natural tendency to enjoy is one thing. And second thing is also that pravritti marga to be followed in the early phase of one's life. Srila Prabhupada describes that one becomes brahmachari, one is trained as a brahmachari, gurukule vasandanto gurorhitam, is trained under a guru. Then progressively he becomes grihastha, accepts the responsibility, and then progressively he becomes vanaprastha and sannyas. And so this is also a very glorious path. In fact, in Ramayana there is a very beautiful description of Lord Ram glorifying grihastha ashram, right, as the janani of all other ashramas. Then there is a description of the kama being the distinguishing factor, and it has to be used judiciously. Lord Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, Dharmo aviruddha bhuteshu kamosmi bharatarshava. Dharmo aviruddha. And such a life which is dharma aviruddha, right, then such a life is called as grihastha life. Otherwise, the life is a grihamedhi. And Srila Prabhupada writes here, in Kali Yuga, nobody is practically interested in spiritual advancement. Everybody wants the pravritti marga, and thus they are being misguided by so many pretenders also. Luckily, by great chance, somebody had some desire for spiritual activities, and then there are so many cheaters. In the name of spirituality, people are thoroughly washed, thoroughly cheated, right? So we will conclude here and continue tomorrow. Srila Prabhupada ki jai,
Jai.
Gaura Bhakta ki jai. Thank you,
Jai.
Prabhupada.
Thank you. Thank you, Prabhuji. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Hare Krishna.
Prabhuji. Thank you, everybody. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu, small.
Yes, Prabhu.
Talking about pravritti and nivritti marga, right? So we also get a lot of desires for multiple things, in a sense, like I about me. So how do we know whether I'm following pravritti or nivritti? How do I like check myself?
Simple shloka. Dharmo aviruddha bhuteshu. Right. Tasmat shastra pramanam. So there is so many desires, but we have to check the desires, and we have to check them whether they are legitimate desires. First thing is whether they are legitimate desires. If they are illegitimate desires, then they have to be at once given up. Right. So tasmat shastra pramanam te karya akarya vyavasthito. There I'm so happy with you. I mean, such a you are yourself such an advanced devotee, and but still you have question time to time. Okay, thank you for all your questions. I know
I'm
I'm
not
asking
advanced Prabhuji.
for Karan, so you ask questions for us. So, but very grateful to you. So, the this is reply to your point that I'm in follow. So, ठीक है ना? So next time any question comes with that, then be ready for a glorification. So, first thing is there is direct bifurcation of whether the desires are legitimate or illegitimate. So, if the desires are illegitimate, they have to be at once given up. Even within legitimate desires, then comes the point of atyahara prayasascha, whether it is necessary or unnecessary endeavor. So these two filters one has to apply. Correct. Even to consider something.
Yes, my question is like more about, for example, in legitimate itself, a lot of gray area. Like, for example, how much money to accumulate, or how much money to earn, or maybe how much desire should I have for the kids' future, or maybe general other things like like how do we like these things? Then, I mean, I don't know.
Right.
So little gray area. So it's purely not illegitimate, but within this legitimate also is like where to keep our
How
boundary.
much and how less is too less. Okay, anyway, I'm coming to Hyderabad next to next month for finance. So money will take care. Okay, we'll give a detailed answer there. 3 hours workshop it is. So the point is that there is a very fine balance between how much is too much and how less is too less. So one has to do one's duty very well. And at the same time, if we do too much also, what happens is that one day we were doing too much of a seva, and Raisham Prabhu became very angry, and he said that you senior people are working so hard and you are getting burned out, and junior people, because you are not giving them seva, not giving them training, what is happening? They are getting spaced out. Okay, so both are out basically. So many times what happens in this particular example, the context is that instead of working hard oneself, maybe one has to utilize one's time in training people and empowering them. That hard work is required, right? So I mean, very very case to case, very specifically, one has to decide how much to help and how much to take care. And I mean, it's a delicate balance. There is no common answer. It's a delicate balance. One, situation wise, case wise, one has to decide how much is to be taken care, how much to do. And there are examples on all sides. There are examples on all sides. Correct?
Yep.
Hare Krishna. Thank you. Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Thank you, Prabhupada.
Thank you, Prabhupada.
Thank you, Prabhupada.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Thank you, Prabhupada. Thank you, everyone. Hare Krishna.